My fiancé was planning to take his mistress on our honeymoon trip after wedding, but I found out about his plan at 28F. I'm getting married to my fiancé Jake 30 meters in a week. We've been together for 3 years, and I thought everything was perfect, but I just discovered something that has turned my world upside down. Jake and I met at a charity gala 3 years ago. I was there representing my company, which had donated to the cause. Jake was one of the organizers, coming from a wealthy family known for their philanthropic efforts. He was charming, successful, and instantly caught my eye. We spent most of the evening talking, and by the end of the night, he had asked for my number. Our relationship progressed quickly after that. Jake was everything I had ever wanted in a partner. He was kind, attentive, and always went out of his way to make me feel special. On our first date, he took me to a fancy rooftop restaurant with a view of the entire city. He remembered little details about me, like my favorite flowers and the fact that I'm allergic to shellfish. Over the next few years, we created so many wonderful memories together. We went on romantic trips to Paris and Rome, where Jake surprised me with private tours of museums. After hours, we celebrated holidays with each other's families, and I felt like I had truly become part of his world. Jake's parents welcomed me with open arms, always telling me how happy they were that their son had found someone like me. Last year, we moved in together. Jake suggested we get a place of our own but keep his old apartment as a workspace. I didn't think much of it at the time. Jake often worked late, and I thought it was sweet that he wanted to keep his noisy conference calls from disturbing my sleep. On our second anniversary, Jake proposed. He took me back to the rooftop where we had our first date, got down on one knee, and presented me with a stunning diamond ring. I was overjoyed and thought I had found my soulmate. We immediately started planning our wedding, set for exactly a year after our engagement. Before me, Jake was in a long-term relationship with a woman named Sam, 29F. They dated for 5 years and were even talking about marriage. Jake had told me about her early in our relationship, wanting to be honest about his past. From what he shared, it seemed like they had been deeply in love, but ultimately broke up because his family didn't approve. Jake met Sam in college. They were both pre-law students and ended up in the same study group. At first, they were just friends, bonding over their shared ambition and love for debate, but over time, their relationship evolved into something more. Jake always spoke fondly of those early days, study sessions that turned into all-night conversations, surprise picnics in the quad, and their first kiss under the stars after winning a mock trial competition. Sam came from a middle-class background and was attending college on a scholarship. Jake admired her drive and determination, often saying she was the smartest person he knew. They dated all through college and law school, supporting each other through the stress of exams and internships. They talked about building a future together, dreaming of starting their own law firm one day. But Jake's family, especially his mother, never warmed up to Sam. They thought she wasn't from the right social circle and worried she was only interested in Jake for his money. Jake assured me that Sam wasn't like that at all, but his family couldn't see past their prejudices. Things came to a head at a family dinner where Jake brought Sam to formally introduce her as the woman he wanted to marry. His mother made mean comments all evening about Sam's clothes and background. She asked pointed questions about Sam's family, making it clear she thought they weren't good enough. When Jake announced their plans to get engaged, his father threatened to cut him off financially if he went through with it. Jake was torn. He loved Sam, but he also didn't want to disappoint his family or lose his inheritance. In the end, he chose his family's approval over Sam. He broke things off with her, devastating both of them. Jake always spoke of this decision with regret, saying it was the hardest thing he'd ever done. That's the background I knew, but yesterday I discovered there was much more to the story. Jake and I live together in our new apartment, but he still keeps his old place and goes there sometimes to work or hang out with friends. Yesterday I stopped by to drop off some dry cleaning. He had forgotten Jake was in the shower when I arrived, so I let myself in with the spare key he had given me. I sat down at his desk to leave him a note, and that's when I noticed his laptop was open. I'm not usually the snooping type, but something caught my eye. There was an email account open that I had never seen before. The inbox was full of messages from Sam. My heart started racing as I scrolled through and read their exchanges. It turns out Jake and Sam had reconnected about a year ago, right around the time he proposed to me. At first, it seemed innocent, catching up as old friends, but over time their emails became more intimate and flirtatious. They started meeting up for coffee, then dinner, then overnight stays. When I was out of town for work, Jake had been using his old apartment as a place to see Sam. Without me knowing, all those late nights at work suddenly took on a new painful meaning. What hurt the most was reading how they talked about me. Sam would make jokes at my expense, calling me naive and clueless, and Jake would play along, agreeing that I was too trusting. In one email he wrote, "At least she doesn't ask too many questions, makes this all much easier." I felt sick to my stomach. The man I thought I knew, the man I was about to marry, had been lying to me for months. But it got even worse. In their most recent exchanges, Jake and Sam were making plans for after the wedding. Jake wrote, "Don't worry, I'll find a way to bring you on the honeymoon too. I'll book you a separate room nearby. We can meet up while she is at the spa or something." Sam replied, "My hero can't wait to be Mrs. Jake in secret while little Miss Perfect plays house." I was in shock. I couldn't believe Jake would betray me like this and to plan to bring his mistress on our honeymoon. It was beyond cruel. As I sat there trying to process everything I had read, memories from the past years started to take on new meanings. The weekend Jake said he was at a conference but came back without any new business cards or materials. The mysterious texts he would get that always made him smile. The times he was distant or distracted, which he blamed on work stress. I thought about all the wedding planning we had done together. How enthusiastic Jake had seemed about every detail, from the flowers to the seating chart. Was it all just an act? Was he secretly planning a life with Sam? This whole time I remembered a conversation we had a few months ago about starting a family. Jake had seemed hesitant, saying he wasn't sure he was ready for kids yet. At the time, I thought he was just nervous about the responsibility. Now, I wondered if he was keeping his options open for a future with Sam. As the shock began to wear off, anger set in. I had given Jake everything: my love, my trust, my future plans, and all this time he had been lying to me, sneaking around with his ex and making a fool of me. I sat there for what felt like hours trying to decide what to do. Part of me wanted to confront Jake immediately, to scream and demand answers. But another part of me wanted revenge. I started formulating a plan. I decided not to let on that I knew anything. I would go through with the wedding preparations as planned, but I would make some changes to the wedding ceremony that Jake and Sam wouldn't see coming. During my vows, instead of the sappy speech I had planned, I would read out some of the emails between Jake and Sam. "Let all our guests know exactly what kind of man Jake really is." I imagined the shock on everyone's faces, especially Jake's parents, who had welcomed me so warmly into their family. I planned to tell Jake's parents everything. They may not have liked Sam, but I bet they'd like a cheater even less. Maybe they'd follow through on that threat to cut him off financially. It would serve him right to lose the inheritance he had chosen over Sam all those years ago. Lastly, I decided I would post about Jake and Sam's affair on social media and tag all our mutual friends. Everyone would know what they did. Their reputations would be ruined, just like they had ruined my trust and our relationship. And then right on my wedding day, I would break the wedding off and end our relationship. As I finalized my plan, I heard the shower turn off. Jake would be out soon, none the wiser that his secret had been discovered. I quickly got up from there and sat in another room, pretending to be sitting there and looking at my phone. When he came out, "Hey babe," he said, giving me a kiss on the cheek. "Thanks for bringing my dry cleaning. Want to grab dinner?" I looked at him, this man I thought I knew, and felt a mixture of pain and determination. "Sure," I said, plastering on a smile. "Dinner sounds great." As we left the apartment, I felt the weight of my newfound knowledge and my plan for revenge. I knew what I was planning was petty and bitter, but I felt they deserved it for how they'd been treating me behind my back. So Reddit, should I expose my cheating fiancé and his mistress at our wedding? Should I just quietly call things off instead, or do they deserve to face consequences for their actions? Update: I went through my plan on the wedding day. I kept quiet about what I knew for the week leading up to the wedding. I acted normal around Jake. I continued with all the wedding preparations. On the morning of the wedding, I got ready with my bridesmaids. They helped me with my hair and makeup. I put on my wedding dress. Everyone told me how beautiful I looked. I smiled and thanked them, but inside I felt sick. The ceremony was set to start at 2 p.m. At 1:30, I asked for a moment alone. I told everyone I needed to collect my thoughts. Once I was alone, I took out my phone. I posted on all my social media accounts of Jake's affair with Sam. I tagged Jake, Sam, and all our mutual friends. I included screenshots of some of their emails. Then I went to find Jake's parents. I found them in a side room of the church. I told them everything. I showed them the emails on my phone. Jake's mother started crying. His father looked furious. They couldn't believe Jake would do this. It was almost time for the ceremony to start. Guests were Seated in the church, Jake was waiting at the altar. I took a deep breath and walked down the aisle. Jake smiled at me. He had no idea what was coming. When it was time for our vows, I went. First, I took out a piece of paper, but instead of reading my prepared vows, I started reading the emails between Jake and Sam. I read the parts where they made fun of me. I read the parts where they planned to meet up during our honeymoon. Jake's face went pale. He tried to stop me, but I kept reading. The guests started whispering. Some people gasped. Jake's parents looked devastated. When I finished reading, I turned to face our guests. I told them that the wedding was off. I said that Jake had been cheating on me with his ex-girlfriend Sam for the past last year. I pointed out Sam in the crowd. She was there as a guest. The church erupted in chaos. People were shouting and crying. Jake tried to explain, but I didn't let him. I took off my engagement ring and threw it at him. Then I walked back down the aisle and out of the church. Over the next few days, the story was all over the news and social media. Jake tried to contact me, but I blocked his number. Sam deleted all her social media accounts. Jake's parents made a public statement. They apologized for their son's behavior. They said they were ashamed of him. They announced that they were cutting him off financially, just as I had hoped. Many of her friends reached out to support me. They were angry at Jake and Sam for betraying me. Some told me that they had suspected something was going on, but weren't sure. A week after the wedding, I met up with my best friend for coffee. She asked me if I regretted how I handled things. I thought about it for a moment. I told her that while it wasn't the most mature way to handle the situation, I didn't regret it. Jake and Sam had humiliated me for months. They deserved to face consequences for their actions. My friend nodded. She said she understood why I did what I did, but she also warned me that some people might think I went too far. She suggested I take some time away from social media and the public eye. I agreed with her. I decided to take a vacation. I went to a beach resort for 2 weeks. I turned off my phone and just focused on healing. I spent my days reading books, swimming in the ocean, and getting massages. It was exactly what I needed. When I returned home, I felt I was ready to face whatever came next. I checked my emails and messages for the first time in weeks. There were hundreds of them. Many were from friends and family offering support. Some were from strangers who had heard my story, telling me I was brave. There were also some negative messages calling me petty or immature for how I handled things. There was an email from Jake. He apologized for everything. He said he never meant to hurt me. He asked if we could talk. I deleted his email without responding. There was also an email from Sam. She said she was sorry for her part in the affair. She claimed she didn't know how serious Jake and I were. She said she thought Jake was going to leave me for her. I didn't believe her excuses. I deleted her email too. I had several messages from TV shows and magazines wanting to interview me about what happened. I declined all of them. I didn't want to drag out the drama any longer. I also had a message from a lawyer. She specialized in cases involving broken engagements. She offered to help me if I wanted to sue Jake for any wedding expenses. I thought about it, but decided against it. I just wanted to move on. Over the next few months, I focused on rebuilding my life. I threw myself into my work. I spent time with friends who had stood by me. I started seeing a therapist to work through my trust issues. Slowly, things started to get better. The media frenzy around my story died down. People stopped recognizing me on the street. Life began to feel normal again. 6 months after the wedding day, I ran into Jake's mother at a charity event. I was nervous about seeing her, but she approached me with tears in her eyes. She hugged me and apologized again for what Jake had done. She told me that Jake had moved out of state. He was struggling to find work because of how public the scandal had been. I felt a mix of emotions. Hearing this, part of me felt satisfied that Jake was facing consequences, but another part of me felt sad for the man I thought I had known and loved. Jake's mother asked me if I could ever forgive Jake. I told her I didn't know. I said that while I no longer felt the intense anger I once did, I wasn't ready to forgive and forget. She nodded and said she understood. As the 1-year anniversary of what should have been my wedding day approached, I decided to do something positive. I took the money I had saved for the honeymoon and donated it to a charity that helps victims of domestic abuse. It felt good to take something painful and turn it into something helpful for others. Looking back now, I have mixed feelings about how I handled things. Part of me wishes I had taken the high road. Maybe I should have confronted Jake privately and just walked away quietly, but another part of me is glad I exposed the truth. Jake and Sam's behavior was cruel, and they deserve to face consequences. I've learned a lot from this experience. I've learned the importance of trusting my instincts. I've learned that it's okay to stand up for myself, even if others might judge me for it. And I've learned that while revenge might feel good in the moment, it doesn't heal the pain of betrayal. Only time and self-care can do. that I'm still single, but I'm open to the idea of dating again. I'm more cautious now, but I haven't given up on finding love. I know that not all men are like Jake. I refuse to let one bad experience ruin my chance at happiness. As for Jake and Sam, I don't know what happened to them. Last I heard they were together. I try not to think about them much. They're part of my past now, not my future. I'm focusing on building a life I love. I'm pursuing my career goals. I'm strengthening my friendships. I'm exploring new hobbies. I'm learning to trust and love myself again. My story may not have a fairy tale ending, but it's my story, and I'm proud of how strong I've become because of it. Whatever the future holds, I know I can handle it. After all, I've already survived the worst day of my life. Everything else is just a new adventure waiting to happen.